All right, everyone. Well, welcome to our second episode of Season 2 of C.A.R.s, Coffee, and Christ, our weekly roundtable discussion here at Automotive Royale. And today we have the exciting opportunity to talk about really kind of all things motorcycles today. And my name is Ross Turner. I am your host, as always. We've got Ray Lawson across from us, who is the man in black today. Dressing all black there, looking dapper. And then we've got Christopher Estelle, one of our motorcycle enthusiasts, also works with our social media here and also is working around the shop in many different ways for us, and we're going to hear from him today. And of course, our co-owner and CEO, Joshua King, is with us also. So the four men gathered together this morning around some energy drinks and some coffee and Christ as well. But we're going to talk, instead about cars, we're going to talk about motorcycles today. So we'll start with some easy ones. I'm, of course, a total novice on this. I've never even fallen off of a bike, so I have no skill here. So we're going to be leaning on these other guys, on their knowledge, their experience, and their understanding of the motorcycle community today. So we'll do some layups here first. So the first question I thought might be good to get us started is, just for interested listeners, what are some good beginner bikes to learn and ride on, to go buy, to learn to ride on? What are the beginner level bikes that are worth it? So, when you think about riding and someone wants to really get involved, they might overbuy, right? So what's a better beginner bike for them? What would you all recommend for that?
Excuse me. It kind of depends on, what their preference is for a motorcycle. I mean, if you're a guy that likes, a cruiser bike, then something like a Suzuki Boulevard, Honda Rebel, small CC bike is going to be something that you might want to get into. If you're into the sport bike scene, I mean, Kawasaki and Ninja they have an array of bikes that you can get that are small CC. And then here recently, and it wasn't something that was real prevalent many years ago, but you get into some of your higher level bikes, but they have a smaller CC that makes it available, like your Aprilias and your Ducatis. Now they're coming out with a smaller CC bike as well. So, if you want to get into as they would say, in the car world, the exotics, they now have something available for beginners that can get into something like that as well.
That's great, Ray. Thank you so much for that. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree 100%. I think, honestly, what I always tell people is, most of my experience has been through, cross rockets and adventure bikes. Mm-hmm. So everything that I've done is, like, everybody that I've talked to, they're like, keep it below 400 cc's or less, like, if you can. Mm-hmm. Most people, like, if you got no experience whatsoever, not even an MSF course, if you really want to ride, get like a 250.
That's great.
Like,
buy a moped.
Right.
Yeah. Little scooter.
A scooter.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's super helpful.
No, I've always told people 400 or less. If you're like me and I had dirt track experience, I did that for about 5 years. I would maybe recommend starting on a 500, though, but then you get a little bit of oomph, but it's not like throwing you out there on a 600. You're already popping in second gear. No clutch.
Yeah.
So it's definitely good to keep your CCs low. Cruisers same way. Yeah, you want to keep them low. Low end. You got the big Harleys 107s, 114s now. If you stay in like a Sportster 883, like a Rebel 500, the Suzuki's 650s, that kind of range. Cruisers you can go higher in CCs, but they're built different, so it's like a truck versus a car.
When I remember, I went to Harley asked one of the guys in Sturgis, kind of went there, while I was driving through, and he just walked me past all the Harleys and said, "Well, here's this Royal Enfield, and it's like real, and you need something like this." He goes, "I want you to sit on this bike and sit on that bike." So I also recommend going to a place, sitting on some bikes, understanding what weight feels like on a bike, because you don't yet have the sea legs under you to really, handle one of those heavier bikes. Right. So it helped me be like, okay, take some pressure off. Also you may drop it. You may scuff that first one up. Something that also lowers your cost point for entry, to learn on, to make mistakes, and not to feel like, terrified, both from a financial perspective, and maybe from a weight and power perspective. It's like he said, graduate into the bike, right? Like you earn your stripes through time, feeling more and more confident, more and more familiar, more and more of that. It's just that caveman brain, muscle memory that has to be built in you. And, sometimes we're all like, oh, I want to go fast and I want to go speed. And I mean, those early stages, that's where a lot of danger comes into bikes, is you bought too much bike for what you bit off a little bit more than you can chew. And so, I think with cars, I think really nostalgic about my first car, but with bikes, get one that's cheap, light, lower to the ground, under 30 inches, and so that you're not putting yourself in a situation where it could be dangerous, right? So I think that was really good advice given to me, and hopefully other ways. I was also looking at things like Triumph Speeds. Those kind of like, they're designed to be, they're in the 400cc class. It's like they're designed to be for that entry individual, and I'm glad they do that. I'm glad there's more bikes coming out like that, so you don't have to just start on a dirt bike. What I was also told is, if you start out on a dirt bike, sometimes if you want to be a guy that rides cruisers and you're wanting to be in a sport bike, they're very different. Very. So it's almost better to learn on the bike you would eventually want to be on, because you have to unlearn some habits if you grew up on dirt bikes. Than when you want to move into street, right? So if your goal is riding on the street, then start with something that's lighter and maneuverable on the street. And I think that's also helpful. I've also heard, the good advice is some people might want to grab an electric bike and then say, oh, I can transition over to a much heavier bike. They're just night and day. Right. They're just night and day. So there's things like the mechanical aspects, the shifting through the gears and other stuff that I think is important to learn at the beginning, so that you, you don't learn habits that make you overconfident in one and then move to too big of a bike, over on the street side. So just a couple of, safety tips there.
The other side of that I want to warn people of that are wanting to get into a bike. Your sport bikes, they can be very deceptive. For example, my wife, whenever she learned how to ride in a parking lot, she learned how to ride on a GSX-R 1000. I mean, it's a light enough bike that she was able to actually maneuver it, do what she needed to do in a parking lot. But is it a bike that I'm going to turn her loose on the road with? Yeah, absolutely not. Because these newer sport bikes, they're big CC, but they're super light. So it's very deceptive. You sit on one, you're like, oh yeah, this feels really nice. I can handle this. But it isn't so much the side to side that you have to worry about that. It's the vertical up and down when you hit the throttle, and next thing you know, someone's looped it in the middle of the highway, and there's pieces of bike and a person, skidding down the road. Yeah. So, there's, like you said, Joshua, there's a lot of aspects that you need. And I think someone should be, they should take a considerable amount of time to do research. To figure out, and like you said, go sit on bikes, go and then talk to the people that are selling them, because, in the sport bike world, you go into one of the shops and you start talking to a guy. Most of those guys in there, if they think you're a novice and you're looking at, CBR 1000 or something like that, or an RR, they're probably going to try to steer you a different direction. Say, hey, let's put you on, back in the old day, if you came in looking for a GSX-R 1000, they'd probably put you on a Katana. It's a little bit heavier of a bike. It's got a lot less CC. It's something you can learn on, kind of thing. Just be real careful whenever you decide to get what you're going to get into. Joshua mentioned it. Make sure it's a bike that's not more than what you can handle. And a lot of aspects, weight, so forth and so on. Power, those kind of things all come into play.
Fantastic.
Handling, that's the thing that a lot of people need to understand. There's a lot of mechanics on a bike that don't work the way that you think they work. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would say is, you mentioned mechanical. I love those old cafe racers, but may not be a good first bike, because you're also having to learn the mechanical alongside just the fundamentals and the function, right? So it may be good to get something that's newer, so that's a non-worry. It's also maybe fuel injected, so you're not having to deal with carburetor issues, because that can add stress to the situation. The more stress you have, as you're doing it, less capacity you have to be
Right.
just super hyper aware, which you need to be on a bike. So just some other things to think about. Maybe that's the second bike, then you
Right.
take on mechanical as a learning curve as well. So
That's great, y'all. And I think, again, kind of covering a lot of the do's and the don'ts is so important. And hearing all the different angles shows how many of them that there are. Because for someone who's, walked into a shop one time and seen bikes, but has no clue how to interpret it, it's like, wow, that's a lot of help there. Like the do's of like, hey, go sit on them, see how it feels. But then it could be deceptive. It could feel great, but you have no clue what you're getting yourself into. So there's a lot going on with that. So that's really, really helpful. That was awesome listening to you guys talk about that. And it kind of segues well into the next part of, well, when do you know when to go up in the CC? When do you know to say, okay, I've learned enough on this bike, on this kind of training bike. When should I buy something that's a little bit more powerful, that I can handle? Like when do you know that you should stage up? Like when do you know that you're in the right place to do that? What would you advise people that are, they've done some safety courses, they've trained, they've been driving around for a while. What would you tell them it's the right time to say, yeah, go look for a bike with more power or speed, things like that? What would you say?
It's to me your comfort level.
Yeah.
It really is. Once again, it depends on what style of bike you like.
Mm-hmm.
With a cruiser, if you've been riding a Honda Rebel for a year, you could probably go buy any 1400 cc cruiser bike and do just fine on it. Because the way that you sit on those, the posture that you have, the way that the power comes in on a lot of those is very similar. The riding mechanics of it are going to be very similar. So on a cruiser bike, that transition is going to be, probably a lot quicker, a lot easier. If you're looking at a sport bike, there's a lot of factors that come into that. Your all-out riding ability, cornering ability, understanding what the bike's doing underneath you are all things that you have to really have a feel for. So, that transition, I think, takes a little longer.
Yeah, for the sport bike.
So there's a key element that a lot of people, and it really comes into play for a sport bike, and it's something you really have to understand how to master. And that's, most people think if you ask a common person, hey, if you're on a motorcycle and you're turning a corner, you're going around a corner and you're doing 65 miles an hour, and it's a 65 mile per hour turn, what are you doing with your handlebars? A lot of people are going to tell you, well, I'm turning my handlebars towards the turn. Well, on a sport bike, you're actually applying pressure in the opposite direction. It will automatically make the bike start to lean for you. The bike does the work for you rather than you forcing it through the turn. Cruiser bike, it's not that prevalent. You're still not going to turn into the corner, but you're not applying the same amount of pressures. You don't have the same type of posture on the bike that gives you a different feel.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of things, but that aspect of riding on a sport bike is essential to moving up to the next level.
Knowing when. Yeah. Thanks for that. That's great. Yeah. Chris, what are your thoughts? Any particular things you want to add to that you think would be helpful for people when they're saying, hey, I think I'm ready to take it up to something a little bit more powerful?
Right.
What would you advise?
Honestly, everything that Ray said was pretty much spot on. It's all based on feeling, like how you feel about the bike, how you're feeling on your abilities, your handling, your skill set in general. It's basically spot on.
Yeah, really good handling plus the safety that you kind of feel, but you feel comfortable, you're ready to do that. But again, it seems like, there's a ton of difference between cruisers and sport bikes.
Yeah.
So you just really have to kind of know if you're going from one to the other in that transition, you got to be kind of careful, right? To make sure
what you're doing.
You're comfortable with that, yeah.
Yeah, what you're doing with the bike, dirt bikes, obviously I was on the track, I was doing motocross, stuff like that. It's different moving up than, say, if you're just riding on a dirt path, if you're riding a sport bike from your house to work and back to your house versus taking it to the track, you'll have a different time frame of when you want to move up into what you want to move up into. But, and cruisers same way, if you're just, cruisers are cruisers. Most of the time you're just going from point A to point B and back to point A.
Yeah.
So, might be a little bit longer of a point B, but you know, it's all about what you're doing with the bike and how you adapt to it, learn it, and overcome the things that you might not understand about it. But yeah, I think it's all based on your own perception. And you know, for me personally, whenever I was on the track, I actually like had somebody eyeballing me for basically the entire 4 or 5 years I was doing it. And you know, I was like, hey, you know, I kind of want to move up. He's like, whoa, you can't move up yet. You haven't learned how to do this part right. Yeah. So he's like, once you get that down, then we can talk about moving up to a bigger bike. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's really helpful because I think again, you're saying it's not just the potency of it or the ability of it, or you think you're there. I mean, what are you using it for? You know, right? So again, it has a lot to do with that. So again, it's comfort, but it's also, hey, I'm just driving around. Like I'm not racing it. I'm not taking it on the road for you know, like a hill or something. Like it's obviously needs to play into it. But that's really helpful to hear.
I think.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you just highlighted just real quick a master apprenticeship type of relationship. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah.
Sometimes grab a guy, let him father you in that situation. Sometimes that's hard as guys, or like to ask, or if you don't know anyone. I know a lot of young guys that just don't know anybody. Find a community, a group that can help you and grow you in that. There's a lot of great churches, a lot of great church writing groups where they will help keep you from trouble if you're willing to accept it. And I think that's really, really helpful. I think that it shows well in what you learned on a track. Sometimes the no's will save your life. So
very helpful.
Well, I was actually thinking about it whenever Chris said it. One of the things that really helped me, even street riding, is because when you're out on the road, there's a lot of things coming at you. I mean, you pretty much have to have your head on a swivel the whole time. You have to understand where every car is around you, in front of you, back, side. Because a lot of times you become invisible to the people that are driving in cars. And next thing you know, they're in your lane, or you're going around a turn and they're outside of their lane going around the same turn you're going, and you're going opposite directions. You've got to take evasive actions. Anyone that's especially into the sport bike scene, I recommend that they find a local track that they can go to and do track days, because there's certain things that bike's going to do on the track and you can actually push the bike a little bit further on the track in a safe environment and figure out what's going to happen. I don't know if you've ever watched GP racing or anything like that, Grand Prix, motorcycle Grand Prix racing. It's kind of fun if you know a bike and you watch it, or if you don't know a bike and you watch it, it'll raise a lot of questions. Like you'll see guys that are going into a turn and all of a sudden, they start doing this wiggle and the bike wants to stand straight up. And then you see the guys, they save that. You're just like, man, how did they do that? Or you'll see where, that's called a high side is what that's called. The back tire starts to spin, the rear end kicks out, they're in a turn, and on a bike, that's just not a good thing. It wants to go in all kinds of different directions. And you see a guy save it, and you're like, oh, no way, he just saved that. You saved that on the high side. Or you'll see they'll go into a turn, the front end will wash out, and you do different things in both of those scenarios. And those things still happen to you out on the highway. You go into a turn that you're riding on a country road and there's a little bit of gravel, or someone had just cut the grass, which is something that is just terrible on a motorcycle. People cutting the grass and pushing it out onto the road. You're going into a turn and all of a sudden, the front end starts to wash out. What do you do? One of those scenarios, you let off the gas. The other one, you hit the gas. Because, think about it. The front wheel starts to wash out. What's the best thing to do? Get it up off the ground. Wrap that sucker. Lift it up, straighten the bike out, and you're good to go. Different situations. And being on a track will teach you a lot of evasive maneuvers. One of the things that I just mentioned previously that'll teach you on the track, if you're riding down the road and someone pulls out in front of you and you decide that you're going to turn your handlebars to the left to get away from them, your bike's actually going to go right, and you're going to go right into them, as opposed to the opposite situation. Track days will teach you that kind of stuff. So, anyone wants to get into the sport bike world, before stepping up to a bigger CC, take your smaller CC bike. Take your Kawasaki 500. Take it out to your Ninja 500. Go out there. I mean, people might giggle a little bit while you're at the track thinking, what's this guy doing? But 2-3 years from now, you're going to be out there on your CBR or your GSXR 1000 or what, or your R1, and you're going to be smoking them because you've taken the time to learn how to do it. Then they're not going to be giggling.
That's great, right?
And you'll still be safe.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, I love hearing just the kind of the tactical reasonings of how to do it, and it's not simply one decision. It's a lot of decisions that go into those things. And again, I love that you guys are highlighting the safety and the community involved. That should be a part of that too. And so, kind of segues us into the second part of our roundtable today is kind of the community of motorcyclists, basically. And kind of in your experience or your observation, what does that look like in today's culture, motorcycle community, motorcycle culture? And is it different, largely from car culture? Does it really have a whole lot of difference? Is it a completely different thing? Because I think obviously people that will be listening here, mostly probably for vehicles or cars, are listening. So it would be nice to kind of compare that too. So maybe discuss kind of what is the culture of motorcyclists like, and is it really different from car culture?
Well, the brotherhood that is related to that, I think, is even stronger than what the car culture is.
Yeah.
I mean, when I lived in Cincinnati back many years, whenever we had our bike shop, we would go out. We would have motorcycle groups, and we would go out, and there'd be 300 or 400 of us riding down a major interstate. I mean, it was like a swarm of bees just going down the interstate. I mean, and we had, it was multiple clubs, and back then the big thing was it was all surrounding the stunt world. We were doing. Some people were doing high speed stunt stuff. Some people were doing parking lot stunt stuff. There were bike shows where people were doing, doing endos and just all kinds of different low speed wheelies and going multiple positions while they're riding the bike, and it's just. It became a culture where, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter whether you were on a Kawasaki, Ninja 500, or if you were on, a Blackbird Raven. It didn't really matter. Just because the fact that you were on a bike was where they welcomed you in. And I mean, a lot of those cultures brought you up too, as far as learning how to ride and things like that. Even though, riding on the street and doing that kind of stuff is a whole lot more dangerous than what it is actually doing on the track. But you really learn a lot. If you notice, there's really only two cultures. If you watch as you drive down the road, even though you may not be a bike guy or you may not be a Jeep guy, Jeep person like Abby is. If you notice, there's something about those two groups that really sets them apart from even the car world.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're riding down the road on a sport bike or if you're riding on a cruiser. If you notice two bikes passing each other, they're giving each other the sign. Hey, you're a biker, I'm a biker. That's cool, kind of thing.
Yep.
Same thing with a Jeep.
Yeah.
Jeep's got their wave. It's that kind of camaraderie. But the bike thing goes back, to decades. Even centuries, as far as that whole recognition of, hey, you're a biker, I'm a biker. Yeah. That makes you cool, which makes me cool.
Yeah. A couple other things I noticed about the community, like kind of what you were saying. What I like about those parallels with Jeep and with is they both are unapologetically unique.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really good Kingdom characteristic. It's like, I'm okay. You're seeing the Jeeps run around. It is polarizing to a lot of people, right? But when they get together at their events, it feels like a community. People are trying to express themselves in a unique way, and they're trying to be creative, right? Which I love. I love that about the Jeep culture, which I'm more familiar with. Right. In the bike culture, I see the same thing, though. It's because when you talk about custom bikes, now you're starting to hit someone's heartstrings, because now they can express themselves within their own community, right? And they can express their own unique reality and who they are and everything else, and they're not afraid to do it, right? They don't, and there's kind of this "I don't care what people think" thing that's really good about that, is not being so slave to perception and of the general populace, right? They really do care what other guys in the group can think about, or girls in the group think about. So that's a unique thing I really love. Also like the brotherhood of that. where it's like, people having each other's backs. And I think a lot of that, unfortunately, I think stems from a lot of the bike gang culture, but also was, done, I think, in a more constructive way in a lot of the clubs. And I think done in awesome groups like the Christian Motorcycle Association, which has done really good to gather, Christians together to ride and to teach and to foster and all of those things as well. So I do like that parallel, because I think there's some really good, healthy things about that,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You had mentioned the bike gang, the bike gang thing, or the bike club thing. I mean, a lot of that started, if a lot of people don't realize that, but a lot of that started post-wars. You had guys that had served, our country in different capacities, and they had that common thing, and they had common experiences while they were in, and allowed them to be around people that could relate to what they were dealing with in today's society when they came back. So they developed these groups that they could get together, and it really was truly, I mean, even more than what it is now, it truly was a brotherhood.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a thing where they really depended on each other and relied on each other to be able to function in the current society that they were in, based on what they experienced while they were in the military. And it just grew from that. I mean, and it went different directions. I mean, obviously the sport bike scene isn't all about that, but there is still that brotherhood. Your outlaw gang, outlaw biker groups. I mean, it's a different concept. But in any of those, I mean, it is truly a brotherhood. I mean, in the sport bike world, I've seen where, a person in a car has, actually like run a biker off the road and crash them or whatever kind of thing. And it will be like a pack of hounds. The rest of the group will actually converge on that car to protect that person that they just did that to. It's unbelievable. It's an instinct that they have as a group. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. I'm not condoning that.
Sure.
I'm just telling you, how the feelings that you have. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like the clubs today are still very much seen in like a very dark light too. But I'm being up here. There's more. I feel like there's more clubs in Tulsa because I'm from Dallas, right? So in Dallas, there's everything's more sport bike related. There's still some, of those cruiser, Harley clubs, stuff like that. But up here, I see it way more often, and I'm around it more now too. And being around it, I'm starting to see, all the negative persona that they've accumulated over the years. It's way different now. It's still very much a brotherhood, but I mean, every single club that I've seen, that I've talked to around the area, they're all very much like community supporting.
Yeah, we're trying to get out of that light and help people see it for what they are.
Right.
And that's helpful, because I think for like a novice like me, that is the perception people give you, and the ones that don't know it. Right? And so you kind of have to see it in its real light of how they build not just their own community, but they give back in their community, how they ride around to really support education and safety and civic service and these things. And that's really what they're about, which is really what the club model is primarily. And it's good to hear that, because I've seen a lot more of that lately than I ever saw like that kind of dark persona.
Oh yeah.
Before, but the movies kind of overwhelm you.
Yeah.
the TV shows, they're really kind of keep fueling all that, right?
They exaggerate.
They exaggerate it, and so you're kind of having to get around that. But in real life, it's kind of like, no, that's not what we're doing here, right? So again, it's kind of interesting though, seeing the different kind of communities that bikers have, right? Whether it's sporting bikes or cruisers or civic stuff, or even kind of the outlaw gang kind of stuff, they're all there. So again, novice perception here, but it seems really dramatically different from car culture in my view. Like it's so much tighter. It's in a sense, it's a lot more meaningful. There's a lot more tight knit kind of qualities to it. Like Ray was saying, it comes out of that kind of Second World War understanding of trying to survive in society as well, and like they bond together to kind of make it through. So some really interesting stuff. I can see all of that myself as well, and that's important to know, because as Christians, what we want to do both in car culture and in motorcycle culture is understand that culture well enough to be present with people in it, and also be alike with people in it, right? We don't want to be the kind of Christians that avoid everything, right? Which there are some Christians that think that's the way to do it. I would say very much strongly no. Though God wants us to be in the world, not of it.
Right.
So we got to be in it. So that means we can ride a motorcycle, everybody. Like, we got to be in the world, but just not be of it. So I think the final question kind of comes around, how can we really shine the light of the gospel into those communities, plural, knowing that they're tight-knit, knowing that there's a brotherhood, knowing that there are mostly club mentalities there, but there are still those negative personas there as well. How could we share the gospel in a way that's meaningful to them and respect, the cultural pieces that they have too, and in a way shine light in those places?
One thing I think, when I think the universal nature of the gospel is something that's quite profound to me. I was talking to a missionary one time that had traveled to a bunch of cultures that I would have thought being incompatible with the gospel, but in fact the gospel is, and the kingdom of God is very compatible to culture. And what I came to the realization is that God has designed culture. The fallenness of the world has twisted it and perverted it. And so what we see is a perversion of what was good. So the uniqueness that you see in the East versus the West, the uniqueness you see in Africa versus, the continent of Europe, it's just so vastly different. And so are we. And so is the design of the kingdom. And so are things like ecosystems and environments that you see in nature. Like, God designs variety. He doesn't do things uniformly, right? It's not about making everyone the same. It's about being excited about creativity and differences, right? But what I found, though, is that the gospel is just so transformative and compatible with culture, with different cultures. It just takes a different form, and it, like services are different for different Christian denominations. I mean, even just denominations are a great example that we are different, and some of us have different needs of how we want to communicate with God and the things in respect we want to give to God and how we want to have our services. There's all kinds of reasons that there is denominations and different parts of the body, as he says it, right? They are very different, both in function and in form, and culture is that way. And so motorcycle culture is just another format of that. It's just been twisted, right? The enemy has put in its own, demonic iconography or, glorifying, breaking the law, or glorifying hurting people. And there's just the brokenness of the world that's falling upon a culture and just twisting it kind of. And my hope is to restore, like we're a restoration shop, like we do renewal. And we want to bring that renewal into the car community and culture. Now, again, like I mentioned, there are people that are doing this. So, churches we work with that have bike groups, right, that are doing well in what I would call the riding and club and life aspect of riding. What we're interested in, I think, is injecting the kingdom of God into the building, the creating, and the actual bikes themselves, the iconography, the events and community that we can help, co-foster, and and preserving life, right? Which is, I think, why we're doing a motorcycle safety course. And, you kind of heard us and our passion about that earlier on in this podcast, because, the preservation of life so that life could be to the full is really, really important. But I also think restoring, we're looking at that culture and saying, well, how do we restore the kingdom of God to that culture? And I think we're discovering that together. We're discovering that as we go and embrace that culture and do more into the culture. We love that culture. God loves the bike community and that culture. And I think you're going to see a massive transformation in that over the next few years as we really dig in alongside these awesome organizations that already exist.
Yeah.
I think alongside with that, how we were talking about earlier where the bike and the car community is so vastly different. But I think to go along with what you were saying, how bikes have this big brotherhood with each other, right? And the kingdom of God is also a big brotherhood.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing that, me personally, coming from Dallas, the biggest thing that I've seen and that I've tried to incorporate is taking the brotherhood of cars, the brotherhood of motorcycles, and the brotherhood of Christ, and combining everybody into that. Mm-hmm. I think it's something that's honestly what I've seen is very, very it sends a big shockwave to everybody. Yeah. You don't have to be a part of cars or bikes or their communities to be a part of the brotherhood of Christ. Yeah. And I think getting those guys, they're so bikes and cars, all the community is just so outspoken about what they like, what they don't like, the things that they do, the things that they don't want to do, things like that, right? They're very outspoken and opinionated, which not always a bad thing, but also not always a good thing. But, kind of taking that in and like you're saying, injecting the kingdom of God into that, I think is something that would blossom and go crazy. I don't know. I've seen a lot of really cool stuff, and like one big community that I've seen is C.A.R.s in Christ, and they do like nationwide giant car meets. They save over 2,000 people a meet almost. Wow. So it's really, really cool to see that happen, and kind of putting that into the bike community as well, because C.A.R.s in Christ is very car focused. Bringing it to both. I mean, you already have a tight knit brotherhood with bikes, as we were talking already, and just watching that bloom is.
That'd be again. I think what you men are kind of bringing up is this reality that as believers, we, like Josh was saying, is that what we're fighting is not necessarily a community or other communities, right? There's a spiritual presence that's against the Lord. There are certain things that have been twisted that have to be confronted, right? The gospel transforms those things, and certain things might need to be dross and pulled away, right? But at its core, sin is a parasitic kind of thing. So it has to be kind of extracted, but, God loves it attaches itself to, right? So the community of people he loves, right? He gave us all the raw materials to build a bike, So God loves these things, right? So our job is to shine light into the darkness, to expel that darkness, but also to celebrate what's worth celebrating in that place too, which is community, which is lamenting things together, which is loving one another, right? Those things are really important, but as believers, the community aspect, the brotherhood aspect, those are things we can all identify with. And I think elevate that too as Christians, because we have something even more central to what our brotherhood is about, right? And so we can value safety, community, brotherhood, civic service, all those things too, but elevate even that community by saying there's a greater community that we want you to be a part of, right? Which is who Jesus Christ is, his church, and those things. And I think, again, the goal of the Christian is sometimes overly militant, kind of thinking that the job is to kind of extract everyone and to kind of remove the fun or something. And no, it's really to elevate that to real joy. That's really what Christians are trying to do. We're trying to say, yes, but I've got something even better than that. I'll finish by just sharing a story kind of related here, but I remember witnessing to somebody many years ago, and they were in a music community, okay? Drummers. Drummers are a little bit like bikers, in my thought. They really are. They're very focused in on this thing, this is what we do. Like, they know all the brands. They're so locked into who's a drummer, who's not. And this young man, I knew him for many years, and he was so sold out on that. And when I told him about being a Christian, the one thing he thought of is, do I have to stop being a drummer? That's what he said to me. And I said, no, just drum for God now. And he's like, oh, great, I'm in. It was just the craziest thing to me. So I think there's this kind of conception that everything but this religious thing, I've got to stop doing completely. No, it's just, you've got to reorient it. It's a different purpose, right? So I think that's kind of what we're trying to say here is we don't want to take things away. Christians want to add real value and elevate that with who Christ is. Community, all the things they're doing, the joy, the services are fantastic things. So that's kind of more of what we're saying is shining a light and elevating, but also expelling darkness too.
Well, and it's kind of always been I don't know even how to describe it. It's always been a biker perception. If you think, it's if you're a biker, you're a bad boy. Mm-hmm. And it really carries over. Into the whole culture, and more so on the. And I'm not trying to be degrade a brand or label a brand, but it's more so on the Harley side. If you look at that kind of a situation, if you look at for example, take Starbird, it's a huge car show. Take any of the major car shows that you have in Dallas, or you have 1,000 cars. What's the other
Texas 2K.
Yeah, and then they got the Texas 2K, and there's a big one in Cincinnati where they've got it's a convention center that's 7 stories high, and it's packed with cars and all that stuff. And when you go to those, you see that there is a very professional kind of aura about it. You go in there, everybody is, on their best behavior, that kind of thing. And then you go and you look at, bike, meets like Sturgis and other bigger, events like that are Myrtle Beach, Florida, California, so forth and so on. I mean, all of those, if you look at the culture of that, it's surrounded, it's surrounding, alcohol and women.
Yep.
Is what and so it's very different trying to, I guess you could say, infiltrate that,
yep.
As a Christian, and bring that to that culture.
Yep.
And the thing that I have found based on my experience with what I have done and things, it isn't so much about how you would approach a typical situation where you're like, hey, let me tell you about Jesus.
Yeah.
The first thing that the bike community is going to notice is more about who you are and how you carry yourself.
Yeah.
And it's really what it's all about. If you look at even like your outlaw groups, they have a standard. Yeah. You carry yourself with a very serious persona. You are to be perceived as this person, yeah. Period, or you're not part of this group. Well, in the motorcycle world, whenever you're different and you're basically living differently and shining a light differently than what they are, it gets people's attention. This cat's different. Why is he different? What's going on here? Well, initially the thing's going to be like, they're not going to like you, yeah. Because you're different. But then once people start to see what you're about and the Lord starts to move in that community, they start seeing that, okay, well, I initially didn't like this guy because he's different, but he's got something that I want.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's in a situation where, this dude is always in a great mood. This dude has always got a great mindset. He brings something to people, are drawn to him for a reason. I want to know why. And now, I see this person has a peace. They have joy. I mean, they exude love. And then, and no matter what kind of a bad boy you are, I don't care. Everybody wants to be loved.
And I think they're going to want that because that's what we're made for.
And it's difficult to get into that. Yeah. It really is. I mean, it's
very difficult.
It's a very difficult path to get into that, to reach those people. And the way I see it, it's very similar to and I'm going to revert again once to the outlaw groups. If you ever watch some of the shows where they'll have CAs going, confidential agents. Mm. They've got to first develop a persona for themselves that aligns with these people, or they're not in.
Yeah.
Then once they're in, they've got to prove that they're one of them, or they're not in. Once they're in, they've got to continue to carry themselves the same way they do, or they're not in. Yeah. And that's the thing with the motorcycle world. I mean, even the sport bike world. I mean, it was a situation where everybody was a brotherhood. But you had your groups that if you didn't have a certain bike, if you didn't have lay down bars, to keep the bike protected, if you didn't have this, if you didn't have that, if you didn't have certain colors on your bike, you couldn't be part of their group.
Yeah.
They're a very exclusive group.
Yeah.
All of them are. Yeah. And it's very difficult as a Christian to infiltrate or get into that situation, but it has to be a process. Yeah. It isn't something where, which there's a guy that I know that he drag races, but he's also a biker. And he's gone to Sturgis every year. And he and I communicate on Facebook. And he tells me, he says, he goes there, he sets up his thing, and, he has a group of people that are the same mindset as him, and they do their own thing. And he says, it's amazing. When you first get there, nobody will even talk to you because he's a Christian. And he's set up and everything's about Jesus. He says, but by the time they get through that week, he said, it's always the same. He says there's 200, 300, 400 people that have come into Christ by the end of the week.
Yeah. Yep.
It's that process. You've got to be different.
And he's
you have
there.
to get their curiosity.
That's right. And he's there every year,
yes.
All the time. That's
yes.
Right.
What you're revealing in who you are being is you're revealing Christ. Now, people think bad boy, but they don't realize how dangerous Jesus is. Mm-hmm. The enemies are terrified by him. And those enemies are, the problem is we're bad to each other, Does that make sense? So like, I'm a bad boy to other people.
Correct.
So it's misdirected. The enemy has moved us against, but when you start revealing the real enemy that they would be terrified by on their own,
Right.
a more dangerous reality, a more challenging battle and actual war that they're in, you start to realize that Jesus, he made a whip and he went around, clearing house whenever he was on earth. And it says in Revelations, he's going to come with a blood-soaked horse and wipe out all the armies of the earth in a very, very short period of time. They just don't know who he is.
Right.
What we're trying to do is Mr. Rogers and infiltrate in, and we need to really just represent Jesus, who is, and Jesus even says this, who would be terror, you do not fear that which could hurt the body, but those that can throw you into hell, right? Forever, right? Like there's some, fear of the Lord should be a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
The enemy has twisted that to be us against each other, and that is what constitutes bad or dangerous or whatever. But Christians, if done right, are just as dangerous and just as powerful as Christ against much more terrifying enemies.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can reveal Christ to people and his true nature to people, that becomes more compatible again. You see, because it's just a misdirection of truth. And then when that is revealed, then they get caught up in a much bigger story than the smaller story that they're telling themselves and to each other, right? And then they want to be a part of that war, that battle, that dangerous nature that their heart has been called to.
Yeah. Well, I love, again, what you all are talking about is really the heart of our company, the heart of what we're about. And again, this kind of infiltration idea, I mean, it sounds like the incarnation to me of what God did. Right? The reality is Christians are about infiltrating. That's what we are about.
Right.
We're not hiding that.
Right.
But when we get in there, we're telling you about a better adventure, basically. We're telling you about a better story. We're telling you no to this darkness, but there's a lot of good here. Let's elevate that to the gospel. This is what we're saying here. And then all of a sudden it becomes this meta-narrative. All of a sudden there's a greater brotherhood. All of a sudden there's a bigger community. And that's really what Christians are. We're not trying to, in a sense, take everything away from you. We're trying to say, expel the darkness, but the light shows you everything.
Right.
Like, that's what we're trying to do. And you're absolutely right, Ray. It does take a process in really exclusive groups like this to win them over, to allow you to come in to speak to them, right? So in a sense, but once you're in, you can talk, right? And there's a sense of that. And the same's true of missionary activity in China and things like that.
Right.
They would have to dress like the people to talk to, learn their language. It's a lot like that. So Christians have to be resilient. It can't just be dropping a track, right? You've got to learn.
Right.
Say, I love these people, so I'm going to be a part of them. I'm not going to do everything they do. I'm not of the world, but I'm going to be with them, right? So again, I think it tells us we want to be part of their community, not take that away from them, but we want to help them become a bigger part of this real community, which is Christ's church, right? So I think that's kind of what I think the goal for us should always be, is saying, hey, if I love these people, I want to be with them. Not just tell them something or give them a religious idea. And we really want to go to them and say, we love you, we like this community, but we also want to show you something better than that. So, you guys, mine's kind of blown today. Just so much awesome information. And this is really kind of cool hearing this for me, just to learn all this, but also to talk about kind of a common heart that we have for not just the car community, but for the bike community too, and to elevate that to show the bigger community of Christ as well. So appreciate Ray, Chris, Josh, thank you guys so much for just your time this morning. Until next time, signing off.